So input function can be used to read data from the user as per the required format. Now this function, if I do not use any type conversion, if I start directly using only input, it is always going to read data from the keyboard in the form of a string. And in order to get the required format of data, so I must convert this string into the specific type as per my requirement. Now, what is the syntax? We'll start with writing input, and within this parenthesis, we are going to write the message. So if you do not write any message here, it is still going to wait for the input to be supplied without flashing any message for that. For example, if I'm writing x equal to input, enter value. So this line, when gets executed, this is the message that we have given here. So I will get a message, enter a value, and it is going to allow me to supply this value, which I'm supplying, let's say 10 here. And this 10 is stored inside this variable x. Now, even if I have given this 10 as a numeric type, it is not going to carry the numeric value because by default it is going to take a string type of value, which means this 10 will be stored in the form of a string. So when 10 is enclosed within double quotes or single quotes, so it is nothing but a string, it is not a digit. Now, for confirmation, when I check what is the type of this variable x, I will see the class followed by str. Because even though you supplied this a numeric value over here, because we have not gone for any typecasting of the supplied value, so the default value instead to be string. Similarly, the same thing holds good if I am supplying a float value here. So even if it is a float type, still I can check the type of x, it is still string. Similarly, if I am supplying a boolean value also, a bool type, still the type of x is str only. So what does it mean is, so in fact, whatever type of value you might be supplying, maybe integer type, maybe float type, maybe a boolean type. So the default type of this input function that returns is a string always. Let's say we are just writing, say, input and without any message. So my cursor is waiting for supplying certain input. Let's say I'm supplying something 20. Okay, so you can see when I'm supplying 20, though it is a numeric one, I'm getting the value in single quotes, which indicates that the default return type of this input function is a string. Now let's say we are writing x equal to input. Here I'm going to put some message, enter value. So now whatever message we have given here, the same thing appears and the cursor will be waiting so that I can supply some input. Let's say I'm supplying 10. So now in order to find out what type of value that is being stored here, you can see the type of x is your str type. Now when I print x, I'll be getting 10 within single quotation mark, that is a string. So similarly, if I'm going to input any value, for that matter, let's say I'm going to supply a float type of value, let's say 10.56. So now when I display x value, you can see again the 10.56 is in the format of string. So anytime you input any type of value, input function is always going to consider that value in the form of a string unless until you convert them into as per your required type. Now let's see one example. Say the example like I want to write a program to input two numbers and I want to find their sum. Now here we can see we have written this input function, input followed by a message, that is enter a number. But what we did do here, we are just trying to typecast. So we know that input function by default will take up any value in the form of a string. So by the help of this string, we are converting this string into integer. Okay. Similarly, the num2, again I am using one more input function. Again there is a typecasting being done. So by the end of these two statements, after I supply two values, let's say I'm supplying some 10 and 20. So 10 by default is string type but is being converted into integer then it is assigned to your num1. Similarly, 20 is also assigned to num2 in the form of integer. So now when I'm writing sum equal to num1 plus num2, so because num1, num2 both are holding numeric values, so this will produce the addition of these two numbers which I'm printing towards the end. Now, let's say 10 is supplied. So as you know, by default is a string. But what this int has done, it has converted this string 10 into a numeric value and assigned to num1. Very likely when I'm passing the second value, that is 20, this is once again a string. But because of this typecasting, it has been converted into a numeric value and assigned to num2. So this sum is going to find out 10 plus 20, 30. So towards the end, we'll get a message like total is 30. So let's see here, we have used this input function along with a message, enter a number, and then I'm converting this into int. Similarly, the second line, again asking for another number, which is a string by default, converted into integer. So at the end of these two lines, num1 and num2 both are carrying the numeric values what we have entered here, and then followed by the summation of these two stored in the variable sum, and we are finally printing it. So let's say I'm entering 10 here, so second number 20, so we are getting the result as 30. So let's see, if I do not use the typecasting here, so by default whatever numeric value I will enter here, that will be in the form of a string. So num1 will be holding a string value, similarly num2 also going to take a string value. So when I'm joining two string values with the help of a plus, this is going to act as a concatenation operator. So now let's say we are supplying 10 here and 20. So you can see here that 10 and 20 they has been taken as your string value. So when I'm applying the plus operator between these two strings, it is concatenating or joining of the two strings. So this is not the required output while we are looking for sum of two numbers. So unless until we convert them into the specific type, we will not be able to find out the corresponding result what we are expecting. So let's see one more example where we are trying to read the details of an employee data from the keyboard, and we want to print those details. So here we have taken the input function once again, but this time we are converting them into an int, so that eno is going to carry some integer value. Similarly, ename, because it is normally a string, so hence I'm not going for any kind of typecasting here. Third one, employee salary, let's say we are trying to convert into float type, and this married, that is going to carry some boolean result. Here we am supplying some input which is a boolean type. That is imagining that these are the set of values that I have supplied for this employee number, name, your salary, and your married. So when I display the results, okay, I'm going to get everything like eno as 1001, ename as your Madhuri, employee salary 6000.35, and this employee married, that is your true. So let's see here, when I run this, so I'm being asked this, say 1001, name, say 3, and say dot 35, say I'm writing true. So these are the details which I'm getting. So if I check the value of this 1001, which is converted into integer, so it will be int type. This is not converted or no typecasting is applied, so it is going to be your string type. Whereas these two, this is a float type, this is going to be a boolean type. Now this is a special kind of taking input, right? Program to read multiple values in a single line. So how could we do that? So here we can make a list of those variables. Let's say in this program, I want to take up two variables. So I took a comma b. Now within the square brackets, so you can see this portion, this is nothing but the input followed by the message. And what I'm going to add here, a function that is split function. Now this x, after this for, you can see we have written x. So this x is going to take up each of the values that is supplied here. Okay. Now each value that I'm supplying here, which are separated by a space, okay, and each of those values will be typecasted into your integer. Okay. So if you do not take this typecasting, so they will be considered as a string automatically. So at the output, when I run this, what I could get is I am getting this enter two numbers, the message, followed by those two numbers. I am separating with a space. This is the default separator. If you want to specify some symbol specifically, accordingly you have to supply the values. Now after these values are supplied, when I press enter here, each of these values which are considered by x have been converted into integer and then stored inside the variable a and b respectively. So once the a and b values have been taken up in numeric format, so I can simply print the sum of those, which is nothing but your 30 here. So like we said, split function by default takes a space as a separator. Here we have not given anything, means by default the separator is a space. But we can also pass anything as per our choice, maybe comma, colon, hyphen, anything of your choice also. Let us run this. Because the split is by default space, I have to give a space 10 space 20. So I'm getting the result as 30. Now while running, in case I'm not going to supply any space, let's say I'm supplying 10 and simply pressing enter, so it is not taking the second value and is giving an error here. So we can specify any special character. Let's say I'm writing a colon here. So which means now when I supply these two inputs, I have to separate them with the help of a colon. Let's say I'm writing 10 colon 20. So I'm getting the same result because the separator we have given is a colon. So let's see one more example where I'm going to take three float numbers from the keyboard once again in the same line. But this time we would like to take the hyphen as the separator and finally print their sum. So we can take the same input function once again, and here you can see the split is having a hyphen because we want to separate the input through a hyphen, and each of this x value that I'm passing here will be converted into float and they will be stored into the respective a, b, c, and finally I'm just trying to print the sum of them. So you can see here, this is the first value where there is a hyphen separator, second value, another hyphen separator. So this will be taken as your A, and this 20.6 is by B, and 30.1 will be taken as C, and which are automatically with the help of this typecasting has been converted into float each. And finally, because A, B, C are now holding the float type of value, so the a plus b plus c is going to give us the sum in floating point numbers. Now apart from the input function, we have a special function that is called eval, which can take a string and evaluate the result. Let's see here. Let's say I'm writing eval where 10 plus 20 plus 30, this is an expression, and I'm keeping inside a string. This double quotes indicates that this entire expression is kept within a string, even though they are kept within a double quotation in the form of a string. And so this eval is going to take each of this numeric value and is going to calculate the result. Now I can also use input function along with this eval. So when I'm writing input enter expression, so we understand this is going to take up the values in which format? In string format. Now because of this eval, it is going to take this entire string like this and is going to treat each of these operator as they actually meant for, that is plus for addition, asterisk for your multiplication, and is going to evaluate this expression normally without going for any conversion. So as a result of this, I'm going to get the corresponding output, that is your 26. So this eval can also evaluate the input to a list, tuple, set. So these are the data structures where a collection of items would be there. And if you want to apply some operation on them, okay, then it is better to make use of this eval function. So when we apply this eval on a string, let's say the string is 10 plus 20 plus say 30. So this is going to evaluate the expression and gives me the result. So like I can also make use of this eval along with my input. So let's say input. So enter an expression. Now let's say I'm going for some 10 plus say 20 multiplied with say 3. So 20 plus 360 plus 10, it has to produce 70. So when I'm printing x value, I'm getting the result as 70. So any expression that is in the form of a string will be taken up and it is going to convert those instructions into respective arithmetic operators.